Hello, everyone. I'm just going to give it a few seconds for everybody to finish logging in from the waiting room. All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's ASCE webinar, Building Neuroinclusive Learning Environments, Best Practices to Support and Empower Neurodiverse Learners in STEM. My name is Alex Sharp. I'm the Director of Education and Career Development at ASCE, and I am happy to moderate today's webinar. This webinar is part of a larger series on success strategies for early career faculty, and it is supported by the National Science Foundation. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping items. You can use the Q&A pod at any time for questions, and we will answer those questions at the end of the webinar, and the slides and recording from this webinar will be shared via email. We have 4 more upcoming webinars in this series, which you can see on this screen. You can also access all on-demand webinars via this QR code on your screen. And these slides will again be sent to you, so you can click those links once you get them in your email. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce today's speakers, Connie Saiharat, Research Assistant, Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Connecticut, and Sarira Motaref, Professor in Residence at the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Connecticut. And now I will stop sharing and allow our speakers to begin.
Thanks so much, Alex. I'll go ahead and share. So, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today for our presentation on building neuroinclusive learning environments. My name is Connie Saiharat. I am working as a research assistant on the NSF RED funded Include project. And actually, that's just coming to an end now, and we're moving forward with a new project. I'll give you a quick program overview so that you know a little bit about the context in which this material was developed. Then we'll talk a little bit about neurodiversity and why mindset matters so much, especially in STEM environments when teaching neurodiverse students. And then we'll get into some of what we've found has been particularly effective presenting a framework for teaching. So just to let you know where we're coming from around a decade of work in the neurodiversity space, specifically in engineering and STEM. We started earlier looking at ADHD and creativity, and then our last project really got into going beyond an accommodation mentality and thinking about how we can change our environment, change the culture to be more inclusive of neurodiversity in STEM. Moving forward, we'll be looking at ways to personalize the learning environment with AI, and specifically for engagement, development of engineering skills, and self-regulated learning in particular. So we've already kind of talked about that program. I'll tell you what we're zooming in on today. We're zooming in on one of our main priorities of the project, which was transforming engineering courses. So we worked with a team of faculty to redesign courses and change the culture of our department. And so really zooming in there, we've looked at what happened in the 16 courses that we redeveloped in our department, plus one that's in the broader College of Engineering. We had well over 5,000 students impacted by these efforts, and found that students reported higher instructional quality, improved student learning outcomes, so they were more likely to achieve higher grades in those courses, and they reported also a higher sense of belonging in those courses. To learn more about what we're doing, you can absolutely find more information about our program and our resources um, at our website, neurodiversity.engineering.uconn.edu, and you can find that with the link or with the QR code here. Okay. So that's a little context. And before we start also getting into the teaching piece, we want to talk a little bit about neurodiversity and what it means. So this is something that people come to from a lot of different perspectives. People bring a lot of their own personal experiences into what they understand about neurodiversity, and we're hoping that you can join our Slido, if you're willing, and share a few words about what neurodiversity means to you. And then we'll talk about what we mean in our project and in our presentation. So far we've got seeing the world differently, being true to how your brain works, different needs, different strengths, different weaknesses. Spectrum of abilities and challenges, varied approaches to interacting with the world, brains working unconventionally, different ways of processing information. Outside of average, right? And what learning environment works for you, everyone. Seeing a lot of differently in these responses, thinking and interacting differently, confronting the world differently, brilliance untapped. A range of abilities in various areas. Okay, engaging learning in different ways. Perceiving, thinking, and interacting as individuals. And so this is nice. Seeing where you're at is helpful. It seems like many of us are already thinking about really a range of differences that are present in the human population that aren't necessarily just about learning, but they're also about other ways of seeing and sensing and interacting with the world. And I noticed that um, there are a lot of mentions of strengths and challenges, which is great. We all have strengths and challenges, right? Every single one of us. So this is a nice way to think about it when we're looking at our population as a whole. So you'll often hear neurodiversity used as an umbrella term that really just talks about kind of a subset of neurological variations, the ones that are considered kind of outside of the norm. The most frequently discussed are ADHD, right? Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, the autism spectrum, dyslexia, dyscalculia. There are a lot of these kind of D words that are thrown around that are disorders labeled as deficits, dysfunctions, right? Um, a lot of these come with another D word, depression and anxiety, and whether or not that's part of the brain wiring or is more related to how folks interact with their environment and feeling like it's not quite built for them. There may be a little bit of both there. But either way, you know, this is a lot, right? And if you're an educator trying to figure out how best to teach for a subset of students and what works for their brains, right? There's a lot going on here. We could keep going, right? We've got auditory processing disorders. We've got sleep disorders, dysgraphia, Tourette syndrome. These are all differences in how students think, learn, process information, sense the world, interact with the world, and really it's a little overwhelming to think about maybe um, changing our teaching for each individual student, right? That's hard, especially if you're in a large classroom. And so um, we like to kind of try and step back from the individual labels a bit and think more about creating an environment where students can navigate choices themselves, using what they know about themselves and their strengths, their challenges to really uh, make choices that work best for them. Okay. And uh, one thing that you'll notice is that we don't specifically define these things as disability. We take a different approach in this project. Some people do consider it a disability, and that's fine if you identify that way. Um, we're considering neurodiversity as a range of variations in a population. And as we step back from those kind of disorder and deficit labels, you can think more broadly about categories of kind of processing that happen in the brain, right? So the sensing, your preferences around socializing, um, the ways you learn best, the attention and focus, the mood differences that we all have. So this covers everyone, and you'll find a lot of students will really resonate with some of these, even if they don't have a label. Um, so it's something that kind of helps to broaden your understanding of neurodiversity if you've just thought about it as students who have a specific label of a disorder. We're also kind of really trying to emphasize the ecological perspective on neurodiversity by looking at the ways that different cognitive strategies can help with problem solving. Um, Different niche abilities can also be used as assets in STEM, and how diversity of thought can enhance team level creativity. So coming from a STEM perspective, we're always looking at how can we kind of harness these unique abilities, cognitive differences for the benefit of what we're doing. Quick note about language. Um, we use neurodiverse rather than neurodivergent. And even when we're talking about individuals, and that's really, we know that it's grammatically not quite right. So it's really because we want to emphasize that group level diversity rather than the divergence from a norm. And I will also mention that there is some evidence of a preference, at least in the United States, of a preference among autistic individuals to use identity first language rather than person first language. So if you hear students saying that they are autistic, it's more reflective of an identity. This is who I am. It's a big part of how I interact with the world kind of perspective, rather than a person first perspective, which is typically favored by professionals who work with autistic individuals, who kind of try to separate out the autism from the individual by putting the person first. So just a quick note, I'll tend to use neurodiverse, and I use identity first language usually when talking about individuals on the autism spectrum, not so much about the ADHDers, just because linguistically it's a little awkward for me, um, but use whatever language you want, and also know that there are some differences in perspective around that, and it's okay to just listen to what folks prefer and use the language that they do prefer. All right. So again, we're talking about neurodiversity, strengths and challenges, and we really want to start thinking about everyone this way, right? Like, what do we bring to the table, um, and what supports do we need, right? And so um, we have found investigating through the literature about neurodiversity that when you start looking into strengths related to neurodiversity, um, there have been some studies that have found relationships between ADHD and risk taking as a positive. Can be risky, obviously, but in science you can use that to take a leap sometimes that others might not take. Divergent thinking, which is coming up with multiple solutions to problems. Hyper focus, which is getting into that really deep focus state when you're very interested in something, which is pretty much the opposite of what the label ADHD means. Curiosity, exploration, asking the what if questions. With the autism spectrum, there's literature that has linked autism to systems thinking strength, in some folks, attention to detail, strong pattern identification, originality in some cases. So specifically, this study was about originality in terms of connecting words in unique ways, um, and and taking deep dives into areas of interest, which if you're an advanced STEM student may be a really great trait. And dyslexia has been connected to 3D visualization skills, holistic thinking, creativity, and even entrepreneurship. So again, we're not trying to say there are no challenges, right? They are well known and real challenges that students experience in especially large lecture classrooms, right? So focus, motivation, memory, time management, emotional regulation. So folks with ADHD, I'm one of them, tend to have really big emotions, and this can be used to motivate work. It can also throw a wrench into things sometimes. Um, we hear about students on the spectrum having challenges with sensory overload in large lecture classrooms, or even online environments where the sound maybe not quite right. It makes it really hard to focus. Challenges with social interactions, maybe having a communication preference that's a little more direct than some people prefer. So there can be communication struggles. And then sometimes challenges with transition. So sudden changes can be quite challenging. All right, and then for dyslexic students, we hear often really just about the cognitive load of reading and writing heavy classes that really weighs heavily on cognitive load, affecting memory, focus, etc. And really hearing that students have to work often 3 times as hard to get the same amount of work done. And so what we're doing really is offering you, hopefully, a more maybe balanced picture, that neurodiverse students are not just a list of problems, right? That we are not just a list of things that we're bad at. We all have strengths, and some of us have really amazing strengths in some ways that haven't been tapped into. As someone mentioned in the Slido earlier, like there can be untapped brilliance going on. So the first thing that we like to start with is the mindset. We did some qualitative research with our faculty who had completed this project and spent years kind of redesigning their course and being surrounded by this strength-based perspective. And when we asked what was most important, if we were to tell someone what's the most important piece of a neuro-inclusive classroom, what's the most important practice? And almost to a person, they all said, it's the mindset, right? And so a quick snippet from that research here, one of our faculty said, the most important thing for me is the messaging, shifting from accommodation mindset to strength-based, and not only informing my neurodiverse students, but everyone, because they're collaborating with peers. It's important that other classmates or teammates also change their mindset about this. And so, and we heard this from students, we heard it from faculty, changing from that deficit-based approach to a strength-based approach is one of the most important pieces of what you're doing. And it's hard to nail it down as a practice per se, but it's a huge piece of what changes the experience for students. So just to kind of contrast the previous deficit-based mindset, right? We're looking at differences as deficiencies. It's very stigmatizing. It emphasizes all the things that we've been told we're bad at. It kind of reinforces that shame cycle that students feel. And it assumes that there's one normal brain and everyone else is kind of just, you know, too different or problematic, right? And this is really harmful for students' self-image. So looking at students like they're broken, essentially. That's where you hear all this heavily deficit-based language, function challenge, poor time management, weak social skills, lack of focus, low motivation, limited interest, and that leads to things that are even more harmful and stereotypes, right? Like lazy, unmotivated, um, unengaged, doesn't care. And often that's not true, right? So sometimes behaviors are misinterpreted as a lack of motivation or a lack of care when really it's something different entirely. When you're taking that strength-based approach, you're looking at both strengths and challenges. You're really consciously trying to provide an environment where students can cultivate their assets. And so that means kind of providing a little bit more variation in how students can learn and how they can show their learning. We're really thinking about benefits to the group and challenging assumptions of the normal brain. So if you look at that, not looking at students like they're broken, we're looking at students like they're one of a kind, unique. Yes, there are some flaws, but there are probably some really lovely skills and assets to bring into STEM as well. All right. And that's where we start hearing that strength-based language coming into the conversation about divergent thinking and visualization skills and creativity and efficiency and systems thinking, right? And so then we can really think about using what students bring to the table in a different way. Okay. So I will stop talking now for a little bit and let you hear from Sarira Motarif, and she is one of our most senior members of our team and has so much to share. And I'll stop sharing now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Connie. Good afternoon, everyone, if you are in eastern side of US, and good morning if you are in West. I'm Sayra Motaref, and I had the privilege of being part of this project since 2020, and I'm excited to share with you a couple of outcomes from this project that we did interventions in our classes. It was received really well by our students, and I would like to share them with you. So the very first thing I'd like to share is IS standard. It's a series of best practices that it's based on UDL, Universal Design for Learning, however, with neuro-inclusive flavor. So it's not identical, but based on UDL. Group of our faculty, we got together, we discussed important things that we need to do in our classes. Again, as Connie mentioned, a strength-based approach is one of the main things, and we try to implement this strength-based approach in culture of inclusion, teaching and learning, communication, and support. And I would love to share a little bit from each of these three main areas with you in the next slides. So there are 6 key principles for inclusive courses, including strength-based language, flexibility and choices, active learning, open and clear communication, accessible materials, and multiple modes of assessments that we go over each of this area together. So the very first thing is a strength-based approach and language. As Connie mentioned, when as an instructor we decide to remove that deficit-based lens and then put on the strength-based and have more emphasis on what are students good at and let them to use that strengths to learn in the class and showcase their learning. We found that it supports psychological well-being of our students. It enhances sense of belonging, especially engineering students. It supports motivation, and we found that it really helps with increasing the engagement. This strength-based approach draws on positive psychology and let the students to believe themselves and kind of empower them. One of the things that we encouraged our faculty, especially those that redesigned their classes, was including inclusion statement in their syllabus, and not only put this piece in their syllabus, but also verbally talk to their students about this inclusion statement. We wanted to go beyond the compliance with legal obligation. Probably in your institute, there are centers, we call it CST here at UConn, Center for Students with Disability, that they usually encourage to place something in your syllabus that how students can receive accommodation. In inclusion statement, we wanted to affirm the dignity and worth of all students. We wanted to communicate the benefits of neurodiversity. We wanted to invite the students to talk, and we wanted to share our values, how we see neurodiversity among engineering students. I'm not going to go over this slide completely, but on the left side, you see the legal version that our institute usually asks faculty to place in their syllabus. And on the right side is an example of inclusion statement that if you read it, you will see that there are emphasis on student success, providing choices and flexibility to students. And I'm just going to read the bold part. This course was designed to address the varied ways of thinking and learning in a neurodiverse student body. So, and we found that, again, this message should be shared, and not only our neurodiverse students, but also other students. They learn about their classmates, and then how they can interact and let everyone to bring their strengths to the game. Flexibility and choices was one of the key pieces that we found very helpful, and instructors can offer this flexibility and choices in all course components. So imagine that your course has course content, then it has a communication piece, and it has a feedback piece, and it has assessment. So we found that we as an instructor can offer this flexibility and choices in every single piece of our class. So contents could be available in different formats. Imagine you have audio learners, you have visual learners, you have those that really enjoy reading. There are different ways of participations can be offered to our students. Do they prefer to work in group or individually? If you are defining a project, like should we ask every single student to work on the topic that we are giving them, or can we let them to align our course contents with the topic of their interest? So I like to add a little bit more about this in the future slides, that we offered a strength-based projects here at UConn that for our mechanics courses, our students were able to align and using mechanics concept in real world examples. So they were those that bringing the topic and share it with the faculty and work on that. And the other piece is the grading and assessment. Like, is there any one way to assess our students, or if there is a project due and there are deliverables, can we allow our students to use different modalities to showcase their work? I'd like to share with you an example of my own class. I teach mechanics of materials here at UConn. It's a flipped classroom that students watch videos before coming to the class, and then during class we have discussion and problem-solving activity. It's a large classroom with usually enrollment of 120 to 180 students. These are the things I did in my class, and I'm still offering that actually. So for the contents, the course contents are available in videos. As I mentioned, it's a flipped classroom, but the videos are captioned, like we added captions to these videos. And not only students have option of watching videos, but also I provided the PDF of video contents to my students, or for those that they prefer to read. At some point, I switched using a smart book or a digital version of the textbook because I could support my audio learners. There are many real-world examples shared in this class, especially in the beginning. Usually I have images from like nature or animals that they can see mechanics concept. Visualization is one of the big things I'm emphasizing, and physical models for students who loves to interact with hands-on activity. For the assessments, there are multiple ways they can showcase their knowledge: weekly homeworks, optional quizzes to recap each chapter. They have a smart book reading that comes with a digital version of the textbook. We do a group work activity during class. And then the last one, they have hands-on activity and optional final exam. I'd like to talk about this optional final exam a little bit more, that for the major assessment, there are 3 midterm exams in my class, but students, if they don't do well in one of them, they can still come to the optional final exam and their grade will be replaced with the lowest midterm exam. So what I found that having this choice for students, it keeps them hopeful until end of the semester. So they know that there's always another opportunity that they can address any deficiencies, and also very good motivation for excellent students to work really hard from day one. But again, the grade is basically distributed among so many activities, and for engagement, I used Think, Pair, Share, one of the active learning strategies, Slido polls, similar to what Connie just shared with us in the beginning, teamwork problem-solving activity. I take pool noodles to the class, so they interact with some physical models, and then strength-based projects that I have a slide towards the end of our presentation that I will share with you. We found that one of the greatest strategies to enhance engagement among our students, again, not only we are supporting our neurodiverse students, but everyone. I feel that all of us are in a spectrum of neurodiversity, and we found that in these I classes that we redesigned, active learning has a major role. So we found that offering active learning, it increases the student performance in a STEM field. It's going to move us from the passive mode of learning, rather than like the instructor standing in front of the class and everyone passively listen to that. It's more active and students are in charge of their learning. It emphasizes higher order of thinking, and we found that students' interactions, especially in group work, is one of the best things that we can do. So when they interact with each other, most of the learning happening at that time. And obviously, we as an instructor provide them feedback during the active learning. Real quick, there are many active learning techniques available. I'm pretty sure you may do some of them in your classes: brainstorming, think, pair, share, clicker questions, 1 minute essay, and so on. So I'm not going to read the entire list. However, I'd like to share one of the easiest one that you can do. Think, pair, share. It doesn't take more than 3 minutes of your class. What I have seen, like in our classes, when we ask a question, no one raises their hand in large classroom, especially students feel shy, or they feel they might be judged. And maybe there are only 2 or 3 people that they always raise their hand. In Think, Pair, Share, so we ask a question, ask students to think about this 1 minute. We ask them to discuss their answer with a friend next to them, and then sharing part. That the sharing part, students can share as a group, so it kind of helps with reducing the anxiety when it comes to the sharing time. So again, if you're looking for a low-hanging fruit active learning, Think, Pair, Share probably is the easiest one that you can try. But again, if you have questions about other techniques, I'll be more than happy to share with you more information. Now, if you want to design this active learning for your class, there are a couple of best practices. Make sure that that active learning is aligned with your learning objectives. So maybe there are areas in your course that the students have misunderstanding or the most challenges. So those are the areas you want to do active learning. We want to provide clear instruction to our students before doing the active learning. We want to tell them what is the potential deliverables towards the end, right? So rather than keep them confused that, oh, what should I do? How should I act? What should I submit towards? And we kind of instruct them ahead of time, kind of like a rehearsal. This is what exactly we want to do. Assigning role is really helpful, as well as providing feedback matters. So if you are doing an active learning, a problem or something, make sure that you wrap up that activity by providing the correct answer to students, or providing clarification. And finally, we found that if the active learning is not assigned with a grade, maybe students do not bother themselves to do that. So assigning a little bit grade would be very helpful to motivate everyone to participate in active learning. Before I move on to the next slide, adding a little bit neurodiversity flavor to that active learning. couple of best practices. Maybe be careful with time. Try to be a coach for your students. Keep track of time. For those of our students, maybe ADHD students, that sometimes they hyper-focus, they loses track of time. You may wanna, for the instruction, you may break it down to different steps. For problem statement, think about your visual learners. Is it possible that you visually share the problem statement with them? So we want to kind of emphasize on what they are good at and then bring it to the basically activity. Open and clear communication is another part of our neuroinclusive teaching best practices. We really wanted to keep a loop of communication. So it's not only we provide feedback for our students on their work and assessment, but also the channel is open for them to talk to us and give us feedback as an instructor. In addition, I found that myself, it's nice that especially in large classroom, we try to be a coach, especially for ADHD dyslexic students. Sometimes they really lose track of time, and it's not because of like they are lazy or they're irresponsible. So we don't want to label our students with those things, but maybe just reminding them, maybe on the day of deadline, we send an announcement and said, yeah, something is due. Or for a project, we want to make sure that we explicitly tell them the expectations. What are the like clear and detailed written instruction to our students? We can provide visual supports when possible, and we wanted to be consistent about response time. What for the last item, for example, having an assessment, we wanted to give them feedback in a timely manner rather than maybe our grading takes like a month or so. So students can immediately reflect their poor performance or their academic performance. For AI, for processing feedback, I know there are like variety of ideas around AI. However, especially in our recent project we have received from NSF, we feel that AI could be an assisting tool, especially for neurodiverse students, if it is used in a right way. So we don't want to encourage our students to blindly, unethically use AI, but AI can generate summaries, checklists, it can reduce redundancy and simplify language. It can be used as a very good tutor. Students can self-assess themselves if they have like an AI agent. It can reduce emotional intensity, help them with self-regulation. Again, they are still in the early phases how AI can be integrated in engineering and mathematics classes, but again, our approach is an inclusive approach towards AI. I already mentioned that for accessible materials, we love to provide the contents in different modality. Captions is really helpful. It's nice that you have 99% captions, multiple formats, including electronic, hard copy, video if possible, color contrast, alternative text to image. Again, these are ADA Act that I'm pretty sure you're familiar with, but it really helps to students to have multiple ways of learning. Lecture recording has been identified as one of the great resources, especially by our neurodiverse students, that there are multiple platforms available to instructors like Kaltura, YouTube, Microsoft. I noticed that Connie had the caption while she was talking. I don't think you can see for me, but on the Zoom, you can turn on the caption option. So that's another great thing. AI tools can help with transcript and summaries of those videos, and then live captioning that I just mentioned. Regarding the assessment, this is another area as an instructor you can think of how you can offer flexibility and choices, right? Maybe at the very first step, think on your own that am I valuing a special strength or a skill by this type of assessment, or everyone with variety of strengths and skills can showcase? So that's the main question for us. Are there other modes that I can let my students to show their learning? It's super helpful if you provide our students with rubric and ensure equal expectation across the different modalities. And building options across course, I'd really like to emphasize on one of the example here in our program. that a couple of our faculties who are teaching our courses, they came up with different tracks for the final grade calculation. We know that we have students who are good exam takers, and some of them, they may go through anxiety and stress, and they're bad exam takers. And some of the students love doing projects, they enjoy, they go beyond the expectation, and there are people that maybe they don't like teamwork or they feel it's too long. So they provided options, project and exam-based assessment to all groups. However, students could choose if they wanted to have more weights on project versus exam and vice versa. So many of our students love this idea. Like it's the group that loved project, everyone did both. But the project lovers, they had like 60% of their grade coming from project, 20% from exam. And then those that preferred the exam, they picked opposite situations. So again, we can get creative about that. Here is other interventions that we did. Oral exam, like we had a faculty here teaching fluid mechanics. Oral exam was an option to a written exam, and there were a few students that picked this option. Regarding the recorded videos, like this is basically referred to when the project is due, should everyone submit like 30 pages of writing? Keeping our dyslexic students, ADHD students, that writing is a challenge for them. Can we let them get creative and provide a video of their project, or use their visualization, provide a poster, or maybe a website or a graphic design? Again, each course has its own objectives. We just wanted to see how much room we have to let the students to bring their strengths to the assessment. Here's the strength-based project that I mentioned. It's from course of statics. We call it Applied Mechanics 1. That the students were supposed to analyze on the left corner of the image. You see there is a truss structure with a weight. So not only students did and solved this problem manually, but they incorporated this work with beautiful painting, because that was the strength that the student bring, and kind of add to the beauty of this work. So to run this strength-based project, again, alignment matters, choice of modality, how they can present their work, video presentation, and so on, providing expectation, and finally, students can use their learning and make it align with their interest. This is my last slide. So if you're thinking of doing an intervention in your classroom, think about time and labor, right? So like how much time you got to spend to create a new assessment. Are you planning to evaluate that intervention in your class? Like, is it successful? Is it received well from your students? One of the things we noticed in our large classroom, doing a strength-based project in a class of 200 was really overwhelming for one of our faculty. So I think they got to the point that they discontinued for a while until figuring out the logistic for that. So if you are thinking of offering a neuro-inclusive classroom, maybe adopt one strategy at a time, test it, see how students like it. Is it helping to all of your students? And then move forward with that. And that's it. I guess we are pretty much on time. We wanted to dedicate 15 minutes to Q&A. We are ready for your questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Connie and Zarira. We can take some questions now if you want to pop those into the Q&A pod. Give everyone a couple of minutes to think on those. Wait another minute. I guess your presentations were so informative that we have no questions. Okay. Oh, here's one. Okay. Do your neurodiverse students let you know about their issues in learning?
Connie, do you want me to handle? Yeah, and no, they don't, and we don't specifically ask our students to share if they are neurodiverse or not. We only receive like accommodation letter for a couple of students, but we know that many of our students are neurodiverse, but they don't have official accommodation. So the idea is we have redesigned our classroom that the accommodation is already there. So there are choices available for everyone, including our neurodiverse students, that they can use it to use their learning preferences, to showcase their knowledge the best way that is possible. However, one thing that I want to add, if students reach out to me and come to my office hours and say, yeah, I'm a neurodiverse or ADHD, so my messaging is empowering. So I'm going to say, wow, this is amazing. Did you know that we have such project? And did you know that you are good at this and that? Do you know that, for example, for ADHD, as an example, ADHD students are very creative because of being a risk takers, because of their hyper focus, and because of the way that their brain works. So no, I don't ask unless the students share, and then I follow up. And like in terms of positive messaging, I try to empower them.
I would add also, though, that in my interviews with faculty, I did hear several faculty say that students were more willing to talk to them after hearing um, like the inclusion statement or knowing that they had specifically redesigned a course with neurodiversity in mind. So they talked a lot about increased trust and increased communication. But like Sarira said, it doesn't mean that every student will. Lots of students either don't know or just are perfectly happy to fly under the radar as long as they are getting what they need in the classroom.
Thank you both. I have another question from Maxine. Could you please suggest techniques for asynchronous online courses?
For the again, for the it's similar to synchronous classes, definitely for the assessment, you can offer multiple choices to your students, right? So in terms of assessment, you can build that flexibility and choices rather than just maybe one mode of assessment or a restriction on, let's say, their final project and so on. In terms of, I really like to emphasize on the interaction piece with an instructor, which is kind of important in asynchronous classes. We didn't have a slide here, but also in terms of availability and accessibility to instructor, we try to offer different modalities. Like students had the choice of seeing us in person, meet us virtually, and then like depends on how their need is, or there was not a fixed office hours. Like there was a fixed office hours, but in our syllabus many of us added that you can also email us and request time. So we try to kind of be flexible as possible in terms of providing access to the instructor for the course. In terms of course content, I know students need to probably interact with online contents, but in terms of assessment and communication, definitely there are choices for neuroinclusive best practices.
I would
Thank
add,
you. Anything to add? There you go.
yeah, I'll add a couple of things. Keep videos brief. So the brief is great. 5 minutes is wonderful. 15 minutes is pushing it, right? So if you're having lecture videos, visuals that match what is being said are very helpful. So for example, something that didn't work in one of my courses that I experienced was a lecture that was really only audio, and it was just a visual that never changed. So I spent the whole time trying to figure out what he was talking about. And auditory information is harder for me to process. So I guess taking greater care in terms of the quality of videos, the length of them, making sure that they have captions if possible, and providing alternate modes. So even maybe providing the transcript as a separate document is a great option. And I would say one option that can work, but also adds extra elements of challenge is group work that requires students to meet up with each other virtually from time to time, gives more of an anchor to the learning rather than the sense of you're just floating on your own with no community, right? Learning is often a social experience. And so I know a lot of students really struggle in asynchronous classes without the connection.
Thank you so much. I have another question from Daniel, and the question is about uniformity. How are you maintaining uniformity? For example, what if a student chose option 1 after they completed it, they wish to switch to option 2? How would you recommend one accommodate this indecisiveness?
I need to figure out and ask the instructor, but this is my understanding that the students choose their track like by the mid-semester. So they cannot switch. Like if they wanted to work more on the project, and again, the project could be a little bit longer for them, they cannot switch back. Like I know from the course of design of reinforced concrete that students who chose the project track, they needed to work on the project individually. So that's why the grade was higher. And for the other group that they chose the exam, they had the chance of like 4 people contribute to the same project. But there was not option of switching after they picked. So that they needed to make their mind by the time that project and exam was due.
Great, thank you. Another question from Anonymous. Can you talk more about what you've learned about how these strategies affect student persistence or student evaluations of these courses?
Connie, do you want to handle this? I know you oversees many classes.
Yeah, so persistence is a tricky one. The data was extremely hard to track without tracking individual students. There's a lot of switching back and forth between majors during different years. So we really can't say anything about persistence, I don't think, at this point, as long as I'm understanding the question correctly. What was the second half? The second half was
Has it impact how these strategies have affected student evaluations of these courses?
I can share a little bit that I usually have 3 customized questions in my SET, student evaluation of teaching. And one of them is, did you find the classroom environment inclusive? And overwhelmingly, everyone says, yeah, we found it inclusive, many options available to us. We always felt comfortable to participate in the classroom. So again, with all these things that we did, I feel, and I usually have about 50 to 60% response rate. So it's coming from like 60 people like saying that. In terms of assessment, our group has multiple ASWE papers. If you search with like include, and then like individual faculty, we did interventions, and then there were more like anonymous survey to assess these interventions, and they were all received really well by our students. Again, we do not have any question that if you're a neurodiverse or not. This question never asked, but we found that majority of the students, like all the students, responded to those questions. They found that those interventions enhance their sense of belonging to the classroom, as well as enhancing their engagement. So these 2 pieces, definitely we saw enhancement.
Great, thank you so much. Our next question is from Lynn. Thank you very much for your slides and affirmation that an active learning environment is helpful. How do you educate faculty on recognizing neurodiverse learning styles and teaching the faculty to change their teaching styles to be more inclusive?
I can share a little bit, but also Connie can add if I miss anything. So in the past 5-6 years, each year we had a cohort of faculty attending. We call it I-Team. So we were forming a group that they were called I-Team, and their practice usually started in a spring semester with going over couple of training, like understanding neurodiversity. There were many projects, like 2 hours long training on active learning and many more. Then summertime was the time that they were redesigning their classes. They were working as a group. There was a leader each summer working with this group of faculty. They were providing peer evaluation to each other for the things that they are adding to their classes or changes they are making to make their courses neuro-inclusive. I need to add that in the Include project in the past 5 years, we were also incentivized this activity for our faculty. So they were getting like one course release and a little bit money, like I don't know, $4,000 to $5,000 to participate. That is not the case anymore. However, we keep offering this training, the shorter version, to our junior faculty, and we are trying to capture this in our peer observation activity. So we have like teaching observation group that we try to our junior faculty to adopt these best practices and use it in their classroom. And then when they go through peer evaluation, we write it in the report that, yeah, these specific strategies are being adopted.
I would add to that that one element that was particularly effective in motivating that kind of change is including first-person narratives in the training. So we often had students, both undergrad and graduate students, either speaking, giving presentations as part of the training, or as part of student panels where it was kind of interactive. We could ask them questions, they would share. And the last one was a conversation that was between our learning community one year, where we invited several faculty to come in and just talk informally with the class and hear about what worked for them, what didn't work for them. And so hearing those personal stories really triggered development of empathy, I would say, first and foremost, of feeling like this is a real person who's experiencing my classroom, and what I'm doing is affecting them in a very real way. And so that particular development of empathy then led people to say, okay, what can I do? What can I change? So I think having space where students feel comfortable to tell faculty directly, this is what happened and this is how I felt about it. This is what worked well for me. I really appreciated this. Like that, there's nothing that can compete with that in terms of helping faculty understand what they need to do.
Thanks so much. I'm going to try to squeeze in one last question. And the question is from Fiza. Do you have any recommendations for helping students break down larger projects or prioritizing certain tasks?
I mean, AI is great for this. I have to tell you, I use it that way all the time. I have ADHD. I will always prioritize the thing that is most shiny and enjoyable to me. And so I really have trouble sometimes. And really, I'll just have a chat. I'll have a chat with AI. I use ChatGPT. I'm sure others will probably work similarly, but if you put in a project, a timeline, it's very good at breaking it down into steps. It's very good at providing at least a draft timeline. Often you'll have to modify it a little bit, but it takes a little bit of the cognitive labor out of that process, and it just makes it a lot easier. And same with prioritizing. And I found that it will also suggest different techniques for prioritization. So it will pull, from the body of knowledge that's out there and say, one great way to prioritize is using a matrix, and high, low benefit, high cost, high effort, those kind of like axes, and you can kind of place things visually on a matrix.
Yeah.
And so it just
One
offers kind of tools for students to do that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
I also think that instructors, rather than defining one big deadline, you can also define like multiple deadlines to check a student's works. Maybe mid-project, like at first ask them to write the proposal, then give them feedback, then like progress report. So I guess in addition to what Connie mentioned, that students can kind of use AI as someone like as a tool to break down the project to little pieces, but also I feel instructors can also break down deadlines to like more often deadlines. So they see the progress as you move forward with the class.
All right. Thank you so much. That is all the time that we have. Thank you so much to Connie and Sarira for a wonderful, enlightening presentation. I'm sure that all the attendees walked away with some strategies to help empower their neurodiverse students. Everyone, please keep your eyes on your email. We'll be sending out the slides and recording shortly, and we hope to see you at the remaining webinars in this series. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.